from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Wednesday night. It's hour number one of our program, and if you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation, not so late if you're on the West Coast, give us a call, 833-4825-3378-334 And there's plenty to discuss. A couple of quick headlines. The Hunter Biden case against him, the tax evasion case, he asked for the trial to be postponed until later. And they said, sure, why not? Trump asked for the same thing. They said, no, hell no. We're doing it right now. Just so interesting to see how things play out if you're a Republican or a Democrat. And that's sad, but that's the truth. We also have other interesting news, right? One of the things I wanted to get into tonight was the big story. Big story today is that several countries, Ireland, Norway, and Spain, are announcing that they recognize Palestine as a state. Now, this is a big deal because Palestine has not been recognized as a state. It's a territory that's been run by Hamas, or at least Gaza has been run by Hamas. And Hamas has been on and off of the known terrorist list because of how they operate. And this is a big deal because they haven't had this recognition before. So Simon Harris, he is the Prime Minister of Ireland. He was at a news conference today in Ireland, and he says exactly what I just told you, that these three countries, Ireland, Norway, and Spain, are standing in solidarity with what he calls the state of Palestine. Listen to this.
Last month I stood on these same steps with Prime Minister Sanchez of Spain, and we said that the point of recognizing the state of Palestine was coming closer. That point has now arrived. Today, Ireland, Norway, and Spain are announcing that we recognize the state of Palestine. Each of us will now undertake whatever national steps are necessary to give effect to that decision.
So now, this is not me beating the drum saying that Palestine should not be recognized as a state or that it should. This is me just giving you my reaction to this, that I think this comes from an unknown origin for me, right? I don't know why Prime Minister Harris is doing this. I don't know if this is, I'm standing in solidarity with the civilians that have lost their lives in this conflict after the terrorists and Hamas invaded and attacked and beheaded small children on October 7th in Israel, or perhaps because the politics of it seems right about now, right? I couldn't tell you, honestly. I don't know the impetus here, but there seems to be this alliance. It seems to be making a lot of waves, and it's cheered by some of the folks in Washington. I'm sure Hamas is cheering this on, and we had some reaction from Senator Chris Coons on CNN today. Listen to this.
Let's be clear, Hamas is a hateful terrorist organization dedicated to killing Jews and destroying Israel. So that they put out a statement today cheering on these announcements by Spain and Norway and Ireland should suggest that this is not a constructive step at this time, and we should continue pressing for a two-state solution through negotiations.
Now, what I thought was interesting was the talk that we're hearing from the Palestinian Authority. With the Palestinian Authority, because they've been at odds with Hamas for quite some time. It seems now like there's been a shift. And And there's a little bit of a back and forth on that we're going to get into. But Jake Sullivan, he weighs in on that because he says that it's wrong to withhold funding from the Palestinian Authority. Now, he's talking about funding that the Palestinian Authority is now alleging is being held up from Israel to them, right? And that's the region, the West Bank, that's influenced by Fatah. So, and again, not friends, right? They've never really been partners and allies, and you don't see any of them going to their college campuses saying stop the ceasefire now, like you're seeing on American campuses, right? And these are actual Palestinians. So I find that interesting. But more interesting is Jake Sullivan's response. Listen to this.
Israel is responding to the move to recognize Palestinian statehood by withholding funds from the Palestinian Authority. What do you make of this decision and the economic impact that it could have?
I think it's wrong. I think it's wrong on a strategic basis because withholding funds destabilizes the West Bank. It undermines the search for security and prosperity for the Palestinian people, which is in Israel's interests. And I think it's wrong to withhold funds that provide basic goods and services to innocent people. So from our perspective, those funds should continue to go with all of the necessary safeguards, but they should continue to flow.
Now, again, this is interesting, right? And again, I say interesting because I understand how politics works, at least from my view, my perspective. And I know that people withhold funds and are heavy-handed at times and do different things to achieve a particular result. And politics, by definition, is always the influence of the balance of power. How much power do you have, right? That's how you win at this game. And lamentably, it is a game. And, I realize that there's people's lives at stake and livelihoods and all of that. But it's a game nonetheless. And it's a power struggle nonetheless. And it doesn't come as any shock to me that Israel would turn to the Palestinian Authority and say, look, you want to do it? Okay, we're going to slow things down. Is it ethical and right and whatever? I couldn't tell you all that. It doesn't seem like it on its face, but I don't know the whole deal. But what I do know, what's that? Oh, okay, somebody was talking in my ear. I don't know all the details of it, but what I do know is that things like this happen all the time, right? Joe Biden just did this. He just withheld an arms shipment to Israel. Why? To send a message. Do I condone that? No, I don't. But that's the same thing that people do, right? Trump did that to Zelensky. Slowed down the whatever missiles, I forget which missiles we sent them, and voila, then he was impeached for it. Yet nobody's getting impeached here about it over any of this stuff. So anyway, I want to get into what James Comey, former FBI director, had to say about Trump and Biden, as well as Russia's new space program and what's going on at the border. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
When you think about a second Trump administration, what do you think the implications would be for the FBI?
Oh, serious, for the Justice Department and the FBI, because Trump is coming for those institutions. He knows their power, and I think he has regrets that he didn't work hard enough to corrupt them last time. So he's coming for them, and that's a danger for all Americans. He's going to put people in positions in those organizations. He didn't have all-stars the last time. He'll have the bottom of the barrel this time, but people who will want to do his will, and that should worry every American. This election matters. Because of a reason like that, people have to participate. You cannot sit on the sideline. I don't care how you feel about Joe Biden, you must vote for him because the consequences on the other side are too severe.
That is James Comey, former director of the FBI. And our guest is United States Senator Ron Johnson from the great state of Wisconsin. Senator Johnson, welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rich. Hope you're doing well.
Thank you, sir. Likewise. And that clip that we just heard of James Comey basically saying, look, I don't care if you like Biden. I don't care how you feel about him. You got to vote for him because Trump is coming for us. And he's trying to paint it as if Trump is coming in some nefarious way to come after federal law enforcement. But the reality is, I think James Comey is admitting that they've done a lot of bad things, and now he's coming for us. What say you?
Yeah, I think James Comey's afraid of being exposed. And, there is no doubt when you take a look at the corruption of the FBI, particularly under his watch, but it hasn't been improved really much with Christopher Wray as well, who was supposed to come in and restore the integrity and credibility of the FBI, has done the exact opposite. But James Comey, I mean, what a miserable record he has of corruption. Embracing the Steele dossier, setting Trump up in a number of occasions, certainly setting him up for the Mueller special counsel, put America through turmoil all on the basis of a Steele dossier that was bought and paid for by the Hillary Clinton campaign. It was a campaign dirty trick, and the FBI embraced it because they're corrupt, they're radical left, deep state actors.
It's funny, they want to blame everything on Russia, right? The entire Russia hoax. And we still have lots of drama with Russia that nobody seems to be paying attention to. For example, I'm looking at the news and I see Russia has launched a space weapon with hopes to do nuclear drills near Ukraine and whatnot. I don't know how much of that is fodder for the war between Russia and Ukraine, but it seems like there's a number of national security threats that have presented themselves, and the Democrats are just focused on destroying Trump however they can, and honestly destroying America by turning a blind eye to everything that's actually going on.
Well, again, blaming Russia for everything worked so well for them. We still really do not know who hacked into the DNC server. FBI never took possession of that. They have this CrowdStrike pronounced that it was Russia. And that worked so well to deflect attention away from people like John Podesta's emails, some pretty vile emails that were on that DNC server as well. So it worked to distract the American public from those issues, and it just continued to work. It was a technique, a strategy that kept on working, kept on giving. So we kept going back there, but you have to say that the extent that the FBI, the Department of Justice, members of the Intelligence Committee, the extent that they have interfered in our election, anything Russia or China could accomplish pales in comparison to the election interference by those agencies, and now the Biden administration with their lawfare, putting their opponent, their political opponent, on trial for weeks at a time, with a couple more trials lined up. I mean, this is election interference is simply jaw-dropping. Unfortunately, most of the mainstream media has it in for Trump as well, and they're just not going to report on it that way.
Folks, we're on with United States Senator Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, who's on the Senate Homeland Security Committee, the Finance Committee. And Senator, I want to get your take on some of the things that are happening in the world, because there's plenty, right? I mean, we like I said, Russia's launching this satellite weapon. Again, some think that's business as usual because everybody has their little space war going on, and others think it's out of the norm. What's your take on that?
Well, first of all, I would ask everybody to look back in time. We're not retrospective. We don't review history, and so we continue to repeat it. But whatever happened to the moment of Glasnost and Perestroika, where the Soviet Union had collapsed, the Berlin Wall had fallen, you have Mikhail Gorbachev talking to James Baker, both of them cooperating, understanding that you needed a U.S. troop presence. Should it be part of NATO? Should it be in East Germany? How do we arrange this? James Baker saying, don't worry, we're not going to be moving NATO 1 inch to the east, basically. It was so hopeful. What happened? Why are we now in another Cold War with Russia? It's I would argue, because we've had all kinds of enormous foreign policy mistakes And again, we never want to blame ourselves. And listen, we are the good guys. Vladimir Putin's an evil war criminal. I got all that. But what did we do to push him to a point where, first of all, he thought he was emboldened enough to invade Ukraine, testing intermediate nuclear missiles? I mean, something happened there between 1991 and 2000, 2010, up to the point in 2024, where now he's doing exercises, moving missiles around, threatening the use of theater nuclear weapons. We've virtually destroyed Ukraine. So we spent $5 billion overthrowing, a democratically elected regime that I guess was more friendly to Putin than we wanted him. So we overthrew that regime. That hasn't worked out too well for the people of Ukraine, has it? But right. we can't even ask those questions, or we're a Putin lover, or we're a flack for Russia. No, we have to ask those questions because things have gone really wrong as a result of a lot of our foreign policy.
I agree. Now, if we switch gears over to Iran, we've seen the death of the president there, the administration being very sympathetic towards the former president or the deceased president. Yet we don't know where this lands us. Does it slow anything down with what's going on between the funding from Iran to their proxies and what's happening in Gaza? What do you think happens from here?
Well, it's obvious that the Ayatollahs in Iran want a nuclear weapon. It was always a fantasy on the part of the Obama administration to think they could bribe them into not doing that. You wouldn't put up with all the sanctions, when you could easily relieve yourself of those sanctions by just saying, "Oh, come on and inspect us. We're not going after a nuclear weapon." But they put up with all those sanctions because they want a nuclear weapon. So the fact that the Obama administration and now the Biden administration continue to coddle Iran, literally funnel hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy, which means the military of the world's largest state-sponsored terror, allowing them to fund the Houthis and Hezbollah and Hamas. Again, we're paying for this. It is insane. The only way to deal with Iran is to try and isolate it. I think it'd be relatively easy to isolate Iran. But what's happened instead is the war in Ukraine. Supposedly we want to weaken Russia. No, we're strengthening Russia. We're strengthening the alliance between Russia and China and Iran and North Korea. So all these goals that they talk about, the exact opposite is happening here. And again, we just don't honestly look at these things and assess where we've gone wrong.
Right. Now, do you think these are blunders or do you think this is malfeasance?
Well, the part of the Democrats on this malfeasance. Again, America is a good country because Americans are good people. So we really want the best for people in other countries. So it's not the American people that are pushing bad policies. It's the political leaders. And it's been on a bipartisan basis. We've made a lot of mistakes. Some of it is just completely idiotic type of policies. Others just, good intentions that haven't turned out well.
Yep, unintended consequences. Folks, we're on with Senator Ron Johnson, and we're coming right back to continue our discussion on what's going on in the world, what's going on in the United States, and what's going on right here in America at night. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
The best guests, the best opinions. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Where are you guys from? What country? Pakistan. India. Where are you from? Turkey? Yeah. Turkey. Okay. India. Where are you guys from? Turkey. Where are you guys from? China. Ecuador. Where are you guys from? India.
Sagar Baba.
India. All India? Yeah. India. Iran. You're all from Iran. Why'd you come?
No freedom.
No freedom?
Yes, in Iran. Iran is a dangerous country. No freedom for speak, for writing, for singing, for thinking.
That is a report from Bill Melugin with the Fox News Channel, interviewing people that are walking right across the border, coming from countries like Pakistan, India, Turkey, China, Ecuador, India. Not a single one is coming from Mexico because it's a wide open border. The cartels are making money hand over fist. Our guest is United States Senator Ron Johnson, who's on the Homeland Security Committee. And Senator, when you hear this, I'm sure it's something you've probably heard before multiple times, but how do you react to something like this?
Well, we've known for a couple of years now that there have been at least 150 nations that people have come into this country illegally, no valid asylum claim, because President Biden and his Democrat colleagues in Congress opened up the border. They want an open border. They caused this problem. Now, the ones that Bill Melugin was interviewing there, they're the ones that just turned themselves in. There may be some pretty bad people in that group as well, but the really bad ones are the gotaways, the ones we detect and we never catch. And, they'll flood the zone into, take up all the manpower resources of Customs and Border Patrol to handle a 500 or 1,000 immigrants surging at a particular time, which just opens up the border to drug and human trafficking, and that's where the bad folks come in. We know in the Darien Gap that you have these NGOs, non-governmental organizations, organizing the effort. We know there are camps with military-aged men, Chinese, from a bunch of other nations as well. We know that people, human traffickers, sex traffickers, drug traffickers, some, members of some of the most brutal gangs in Mexico, South and Central America. Venezuela's opened up their jail cells, their mental institutions. So, we've got 6, 7, 8 million people that have come to this country and have stayed since the start of the Biden administration. It's an obvious, clear and present danger. It's really probably not a question of if, but when will one of these, individuals coming from a nation that's an adversary of ours commit a terrorist act on our nation. We already know there's a bunch of crimes being committed, rapes, murders, horrific crimes committed by people who shouldn't be in this country. That, let's face it, Joe Biden and his Democrat colleagues in Congress have aided and abetted those crimes.
Senator, the American people seem, at least from the ones I've spoken to on this program and in my personal life, they seem to think that we're headed for doomsday unless we change course and get a new president. I tend to agree with that because I don't think what's happening is sustainable. I grew up in New York. I live in Jersey now, and the amount of people that have come into this country illegally is the equivalent of New Jersey, which is a small but probably the most densely populated state in the whole country. That's a lot of people. And to think that you have a whole new Jersey that's got to assimilate somehow into the rest of the country is just crazy to me.
No, listen, I think America's on a destructive path here. I often warn people that Venezuela was an oil-rich nation, very successful South American nation. The Venezuelans voted themselves into poverty. And this wasn't imposed on them. They did it to themselves. We're doing it to ourselves. So I don't know how bad it needs to get. 2022 should have been a red tsunami. I think abortion was the big issue, and I think that prevented the red wave, the red tsunami. But we have to win this election. We just can't continue going down this road. Our nation is circling the drain right now. And it's not just because of the open border. That's just one of the problems. The massive deficit spending, no end in sight, devaluing the dollar. The dollar you held at the start of the Biden administration is only worth 83.8 cents. That's why you can't afford anything. The war on fossil fuels. We don't use our God-given national resources. We're pushing these renewable energies alternatives, and we don't have the electrical grid for it. We don't have the mineral resources to do this stuff. Obviously, the foreign policy is disaster because America is perceived as so weak. This is when our adversaries take advantage of the situation and make their moves. So, this is Democrat governance is destructive. It is destroying this country. And quite honestly, Rich, one of the things I'm trying to lead the Republican Senate is develop a mission statement for our conference. And I've proposed a one-sentence mission statement to fight and defeat the ideology and policies of the radical left that are destroying America. I think that's what we ought to be doing as elected members in Congress. And I think would be a pretty good mission statement for the Republican Party in general.
I'm with that because there's a lot of spillover, right? This is not just women and children that are seeking asylum from their home country, as we were seeing maybe a year or two or three ago. Now, you like you said, these are all men. They're all relatively young, either ready to work or ready to fight, one or the other. And that's a concern that I have. Because people always say, "Oh, America can never be infiltrated. We're too solid. We have too much defense." They're already here. You just got to wake them up. A bunch of sleeper cells. And not that I'm trying to peddle any tinfoil hat conspiracies, but that's a legitimate concern, I think. And when you tie that into these reports that we've seen with Chinese nationals spying on U.S. military bases, it becomes a real question for concern. What can you tell us about the spying that we've seen and the people we've caught?
Not much more than what you read in the newspaper. The administration doesn't brief us on these things. I mean, the fact that we even know how many people got across the border is we're kind of piecing together information that we have to extract, drag out of the administration in terms of information. So, no, we don't get briefed on this, but it's obvious. I mean, our nation has been infiltrated. And it's not only that. Now we have evidence that one of these NGOs is handing illegal immigrants, before they come to this country, a piece of paper that says, when you get to America, vote for Joe Biden. So, obviously these people aren't eligible for voting, but that's why the Democrat Party is pushing mail-in balloting, absentee balloting, while they've relaxed all controls. And even if they don't vote, they're going to populate generally blue states, boost the census numbers, and those blue states will get more members of Congress, so they can change the electorate that way as well. So, listen, Democrats, the only rationale for opening up our border and making our nation so vulnerable to this invasion, this infiltration, is they want to bring in people that will vote for them reliably, decade after decade. That's the game plan here. There can be no other explanation.
And Senator, the truth is that that's been their game plan, right? Because I think, they've had union support for decade after decade. They've had the support of many Hispanic Americans, many African Americans. And you see that now beginning to dissipate with a lot of black men, Hispanic men, just saying, you know what, enough is enough. We're not interested. A lot of Hispanic women also jumping ship on that. And I think it puts the Democrats and the Biden administration in a position where they're thinking, what do we got to do? We have to bring in some new support, new voters. And that seems to me the easiest way to do it is to welcome the quote-unquote new Americans into the fold and say, hey, vote for Biden.
Well, Democrats have so overplayed their hand. Now, I love Sarah Huckabee Sanders, her response to the State of the Union a couple of years ago, where she said, this is crazy versus normal. And Democrat Party right now is flooding the zone with crazy while they're dividing this nation. I used to say a couple of years ago the greatest threat to this nation was our debt and deficit. We haven't solved that problem. We've exacerbated it. But right now, I'd say the greatest threat to this nation is our horrible division. And this division is purposeful. That's what critical race theory is about. That's what identity politics is about. That's what transgenderism is about.
One wedge after another.
It's crazy. And hopefully people, even new immigrants come into this nation and go, I didn't sign up for this. Most of them are coming to take advantage of the opportunity America offers. Okay, we'd welcome them if it's a legal process. And we need a functioning legal immigration process. But hopefully they get here and they realize, I didn't sign up for this craziness, and hopefully they can assimilate.
Good point. Senator Ron Johnson, I want to thank you for being with us. And let everybody know how they could keep up to speed with the great work that you're doing in Wisconsin on behalf of the country.
Well, the website is just ronjohnson.senate.gov. We're on Twitter @SenRonJohnson.
Outstanding, sir. Well, make sure you give him a follow on Twitter. Check out everything he's doing. Senator, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, and I thank you for staying up late with us.
Have a great night. Stay well.
You bet. God bless. All right, folks, we come back. Your calls and more. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And plenty to discuss. There's something that really interesting happening in the state of Illinois that I want to talk about, which is how they constantly engage in a dialectical battle. And by dialectical, I mean our dialect, the words that we use, right? There's a real war on speech, if you will. And we just constantly change things, right? I don't know, it was last summer, 2 summers ago maybe. We changed the word pedophile. I would say we, the left. The left changed the word that we've known for a long time as someone who's attracted to younger people in a sexual way. The word pedophile, they changed the term to minor attracted person so they could abbreviate it and call it a MAP to, in many ways, soften the blow, right? You say pedophile, a lot of people think, Satan incarnate. You say MAP, and they think, oh, well, they're MAPs. No, they're not. And in the same way, we've seen this happen with a number of things, right? We've seen sex change surgery become gender-affirming care. Well, now the latest in that craziness is a new term. And it's a term that goes by the name justice-impacted person. That's right. The word used to be offender, so you didn't say, the accused or, alleged burglar or whatever the allegation was, alleged suspect. They went with the word offender, right? Or, so you don't call them a convict. Well, now it's a justice-impacted individual. Listen to this.
Well, we don't mess with anything in terms of the term victim. We just change offender to justice-impacted individual. Adding the Department of Corrections, adding Human Services, adding Sangamon and Cook County adult probation, and 2 members who've experienced the ARI system as offenders or justice-impacted individual.
It might seem like a small thing. I mean, obviously changing a term can have a positive or negative impact when we do that. But I would say that over and over again, we keep changing the names for how we are referring to those who have entered into criminal activity. And each time we make that change, each agency has to make that change on every one of their documents. So right now in the Department of Corrections, there's multiple changes that have been made, and it's costing thousands and thousands of dollars just to do a name change. So I would ask, why is it necessary to make the name change? Even if the rest of the bill was okay, which I don't think that it is, but even if the rest of it was okay, the name changes may seem like a small thing, but it costs thousands and thousands of dollars to do that.
Again, this is a debate between the Democrats in the Illinois State House and those that don't support it on the Republican side. And what's interesting here is they're trying to, again, change the word offender to justice-impacted individual. And this is a new bill, right? This is not just a name change in some of the state paperwork. This is a bill, House Bill 4409, that will amend the Crime Reduction Act of 2009 to change all references. So they want to make this a state law. Every reference of offenders has to be changed to justice-impacted individuals. I guess they would do that online. They want to do it on all their paper, stationery, every training program, and every written instance of this law. Among other changes to that bill that, are more on the legislative front instead of the nomenclature front. And I find this to be very interesting because there's so many things for us to argue about, so many things for us to look at in life, in the current state of affairs in America. You've got George Soros buying up radio stations all over the place. This guy's like, is just about as bad of a bad guy as Klaus Schwab, right? He's one of those Dr. Evil types. We've got Joe El Baboso Biden with a border that's wide open. We've got Donaldus Magnus El Trompito in court on 4 different fronts, 91 felony counts, 400 years in prison is what he's facing. The weaponization of our justice system to go after political opponents, right? Just to name a few things. Destabilization of the world through horrible foreign policy, as we discussed with Senator Ron Johnson. And what they want to do in Chicago, and not that Chicago can fix what's going on in Gaza, I realize that, but they've got killings, they've got shootings, they've got crime. And now they've got the need to change offender to justice-impacted individual. I tell you, I don't know who's paying these politicians, but you're paying them too much, way too generous. Anyway, I want to get your calls on that and everything else we've talked about in the next segment. We have a couple of minutes for some calls if you want to join in. If not, then we will be chatting during open phones across America. It's a time-honored tradition here on this program that we do in the third hour. And every now and again, I'll sneak in some calls either on topic in the first and second hour or on any topic in the third hour. So stick with me. The phone number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America. This is Night. This is Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back, familia. And my least favorite congresswoman from the Bronx and Queens, AOC, all-out crazy herself, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was at it again today. She strikes again. This time she was weighing in on why she believes Trump is holding a big rally in the South Bronx tomorrow and my neck of the woods, and I'm looking forward to participating in that a little bit tomorrow. But the interesting thing here is she basically lets the cat out of the bag in her comments. Listen to this.
By the way, he's doing it in the South Bronx not to make a point, but because he's got court. And the man practically has the legal version of an ankle bracelet around him, and he can't leave the 5 boroughs because he always has to be in court. And so it is truly an embarrassment to him, and I am looking forward to the response of everyday Bronxites talking about how they feel about him coming to their back.
So there you go, AOC letting the world know that Trump has the equivalent of an ankle bracelet on. That is exactly what the Democrats are doing to Trump. They're hamstringing him. They've got him on the electronic ankle bracelet by keeping him in court all the time instead of allowing him to campaign. She's effectively making the case that Trump can only do campaigning in New York because he's sequestered there because of this trial. Thank you, AOC, for clarifying the Democrats' position. And everybody that's going to be at the Trump rally tomorrow, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys in New York City, the first and probably only, right? Because Trump won't ever run for re-election. And this, to me, is probably the most historic Trump rally ever, a Trump rally. Imagine that. In New York City, in the South Bronx, nonetheless. I'll give you my live report on that tomorrow, God willing. Anyway, folks, we got hour number 2 coming up. We're going to talk about some corruption in government and the state of talk radio. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to hour number 2 of the program. Happy to be here with you on this Wednesday evening. If you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, feel free to give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4Valdez. And some are saying that the left within the media, when I say some, they're saying that Justice Alito flying an American flag outside of his home upside down to indicate that the country is in distress is somehow something that should disqualify him from hearing any cases related to January 6th. I don't see the connection. I think you're free to say and do what you want, especially if it's just flying a flag outside of your house. But that's what's going on there. We're going to talk about that in a little while. But while I do believe that there's an SOS going out for America, there's a very, very corrupt government system, and that's why we need to send out that SOS. And we see it all over, right? Whether it's the weaponization of the legal system against a political opponent. We've seen the Democrats rig the system against Donald Trump in so many different ways. Right, we saw them do it with the Steele dossier, the Russia hoax. We've seen them do it with 2 phony impeachments, one of them when he wasn't even president anymore. We've seen the hard way to go that they gave him in the 2020 election, not hearing cases when he had legal complaints that wouldn't be heard. We've seen the abuse of power of changing everything to allow just about every last mail-in ballot for a week at a time and even beyond Election Day. And we see it now, still, as they come after Trump with lawfare, with the weaponization of the legal system, where they come after him to try and marginalize him, to try and sideline him, to chill his campaign, to chill his speech with a gag order. And Trump always fires back. Yesterday, he had some comments outside the courthouse. Listen to this.
It's a very serious situation when a Republican nominee for president, the Republican nominee, somebody that won easily and quickly in record time, gets, number one, gagged, and number 2 is before a Democrat-appointed judge, and you're playing with fire like this. It's very sad. But the good news is they've not proven a case.
They've not proven their case. Trump is confident in his defense. And the reality is they are stymieing him, right? He is being stifled. He's being slowed down. There's definitely a drag being put on his campaign because he can't speak, he can't travel, there's a lot of things he can't do because he's tied down. He's spending a ton of money defending himself. You just heard AOC say that he's doing his rally in New York because he needs the money and because he has the equivalent of an ankle bracelet on. This, to me, is a corrupt government in action. This is the corruption of our bureaucracy and how they try to sabotage Trump. And somebody who understands this better than many is Mark Moyar. Mark Moyar is a military historian, a professor at Hillsdale College, former director of the Office of Civilian Military Cooperation at the U.S. Agency for International Development during the Trump years. And he's our guest right now. Mark Moyar, welcome back, sir.
Hey, great to be with you.
You bet. I want to discuss your book, and it's titled Masters of Corruption. And I think this is important to discuss because that is the case, right? There are so many masters of corruption in Washington, D.C. And you tell the story, as your subtitle indicates, how the federal bureaucracy sabotaged the Trump presidency. And I would argue is still doing that. Now that he's not president, they're doing it to his candidacy. So tell us a little bit about the book and your reaction to everything that you're hearing in the news as of late.
Right. As you mentioned, the sabotage of the Trump presidency actually began before the presidency even began with the Crossfire Hurricane investigation, which, it's kind of remarkable that the mainstream media still doesn't recognize that as a scandal on par with Watergate, and it was worse. You have the FBI and the DOJ using Hillary Clinton's opposition research to launch a fraudulent investigation of the Trump campaign. And so I talk about that story at the beginning of the book. And, fortunately on the right, at least, we have some journalists who have been willing to cover that. And so if you want to get the facts on Crossfire Hurricane, you can. But this book was written mainly about what happens one step below that in the trenches, in the bureaucratic trenches, which is where I worked as a Trump appointee. And it's really, I had spent some time in government before joining the Trump administration, but really it was appalling to me the extent of the corruption. So the book is mainly about how the bureaucrats in the federal agencies obstructed the Trump presidency and the Trump agenda, and how they went after anyone who tried to object to this idea that the bureaucrats can impose their will over what the elected president and the Congress and the judicial branch have to say.
Now, Mark Moyar, walk us through a little bit of what readers can expect, trying to do a deep dive on this topic and in your book as well, because I think there's a lot of people that have heard these things, and it's good as a refresher, but there's some listeners that are only hearing this for the first time. And I agree with you. This is not only on par with Watergate, but in my opinion, surpasses it in how sinister it was and the amount of times they've tried to do it.
Yes, well, what I try to do is give people an insider's view, because there's about 4,000 political appointees within an administration, and most people don't see what is really going on inside. And so I give a firsthand perspective. When I went into the government, I was actually expecting to kind of focus on policy. I'd written several books before this and was going to introduce or promote certain ideas. But what happened was immediately I was confronted by corruption and toxic leadership. And so I reported this thinking that was, what was expected. But it was shocking to me when I did that. They said, that's, commendable. But most of our managers here, they don't report corruption because, it causes problems and there's pushback. And that's what happened to me. I mean, they then accused me of disclosing classified information, which was ridiculous. But, that's what you face, is that there's this conformity. And of course, there's a strong left-wing bias. We know that 95% of donations among federal employees in 2016 went to Hillary Clinton, and it's just an appalling atmosphere, and it's one that really, Trump, to his great credit, promised to drain the swamp. But one of the problems I highlight is that because of how quickly things happened, some of the people who were supposed to be draining the swamp turned out to be part of the swamp. And so for the next Trump administration, that is where I think the greatest progress is to be made, is by bringing in people who really more uniformly are willing to drain the swamp.
I think that's a perfect place for us to pause, because I think you hit the nail on the head where you said some of the people that were there to drain the swamp ended up being part of the swamp. And in order for this to work a second time around, you have to have the right people that are there to actually drain the swamp. And to use a word that the left has coined over the last couple of years, this is very systemic corruption. It's not a few bad apples. It's entire systems that are corrupt. Mark Moyar is our guest. He's the author of the book, Masters of Corruption, How the Federal Bureaucracy Sabotaged the Trump Presidency. Make sure you get this book. It's available on Amazon. We're coming right back with Mark Moyar.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
glad to be on your show, Rich. It's just an amazing broadcast that I hope the rest of America listens to every day.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We continue our discussion with Mark Moyar. He is the author of Masters of Corruption, How the Federal Bureaucracy Sabotaged the Trump Presidency, professor and military historian at Hillsdale College. And Mark Moyar, I want you to hear a clip from James Comey, former director of the FBI, I would say embattled James Comey, who was on MSNBC yesterday with Alex Wagner. And it seems like he's laying cover for himself and the rest of the FBI leadership when he says Trump's coming for us. He sounds scared. He tries to put it on Trump, but I think it's pretty obvious what he's really doing. Listen to this.
When you think about a second Trump administration, what do you think the implications would be for the FBI?
Oh, serious, for the Justice Department and the FBI, because Trump is coming for those institutions. He knows their power, and I think he has regrets that he didn't work hard enough to corrupt them last time. So he's coming for them, and that's a danger for all Americans. He's going to put people in positions in those organizations. He didn't have all-stars the last time. He'll have the bottom of the barrel this time, but people who will want to do his will, and that should worry every American. This election matters. Because of a reason like that, people have to participate. You cannot sit on the sideline. I don't care how you feel about Joe Biden, you must vote for him because the consequences on the other side are too severe.
Now, let alone that message is just a horrible message, but I think it's so telling that he's really trying to cover up his tracks. And when people come after him for all the things you talked about, from Crossfire Hurricane to the Steele dossier to so many other egregious acts of corruption against Trump, and if something goes down in the future, he's trying to kind of inoculate himself. Mark Moyar, your thoughts?
Yes, it's laughable coming from James Comey. Trump really should be coming for the FBI in the sense that they've done so much wrong that they haven't been held accountable for. And this is it is a systemic problem. And this is something that the administration, next Trump administration, needs to do broadly, is to dig into all of these hidden files. To give you an example from my case, I was accused 5 years ago of publishing classified information, and due process says they have to tell me what I was accused of and who accused me. And the government has spent the last 5 years trying to hide that information from me. I have an active lawsuit because this is one of the ways they operate is they accuse you of things, but then don't actually give you an opportunity to defend yourself. They hide information. So I think in many agencies, you need to go in and find out what was done, find out where the bodies are buried, and that is going to be one of the top priorities for this new administration.
I agree with you 100%. And as you're saying that, I had my own little run-in, not at the D.C. swamp and working for a president, but I worked for a governor in the state of New Jersey. And when they found out it was a Republican administration, a lot of my colleagues became very antagonistic towards me, and simple little things. They accuse you of this classified stuff, big deal. They accuse me of having the wrong travel class. But my point was they make your life difficult when they want to come after you. And that's how a corrupt government system seems to work, and it's how they maintain control and kind of stick together. So what do you, I guess for the readers or the potential readers of your book, how do you navigate through this in the book? Do you suggest everybody go out and get a lawyer and sue the government, or what's the approach to the remedy, I guess?
Well, let me first say, and we were talking before about the bad actors within the system. So first, the first problem is at our agency, we had the number 2 political appointee in our agency who was named Bonnie Glick. She was married to the top lobbyist for our agency's contractors, which is as swamp-like as you can possibly imagine. And so this is something I think the administration is going to be on top of this time around, is getting rid of these people and figuring out who is what these relationships are. I mean, we had a corrupt ethics attorney who sanctified all this. But then the next level, for me, after I was accused of this, I talked to lawyers and they said, go to the inspector general of your agency because they're supposed to protect whistleblowers. So I went to the inspector general, and the inspector general initially conducted what can only be called a sham investigation. They didn't interview anybody. They didn't look at any records, and they just said, agency's okay. And then I went to Senator Charles Grassley, and he then went back to them and said, this is ridiculous. Do a real investigation. And the next investigation, though, really wasn't much better. And so the Inspector General is a whole another issue that I think has to be addressed. Now, I will say in the last years of the Trump administration, they started paying more attention. They fired some of the Inspector General. They also fired this Bonnie Glick, the woman who was married to the top contractor. But this all happened in 2020. And so what I think should happen, I think is going to happen with the next Trump administration, is they will have really good people coming in on day one, because there's been several years spent figuring out who actually believes in the Trump agenda and who is there to see the agenda and who is not there simply to pad their resume or ensure they get another job in the swamp when things move on.
Now, Mark Moyar, in the minute and a half or so that we have remaining, I want you to let everybody know what the grand takeaway of the book is.
Yeah, the grand takeaway is that you need people in the political appointee world, which is about 4,000 employees, though I think it can be bigger. But you need people who are there because they are patriots and they believe in the agenda that the American people selected when they selected the president. And those, if you have those kind of people, you can impose your will on the bureaucracy. And the bureaucracy will still resist, but if you have those kind of people, you can make great progress. And that was the biggest problem the first time around, was that you had too many people who were swamp creatures. And so this second Trump administration, we need to get the right people in there.
And let everybody know how they can keep up to speed with the work that you're doing and how they get a copy of the book.
Yeah, my website's Mark Moyar, MarkMoyar.com, and you can get Masters of Corruption at finer bookstores, and there's also an audio book and a Kindle, which you can get at Amazon or Audible.
Outstanding. Mark Moyar, Professor, you are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. I thank you for staying up late with us, and best of luck with the book.
Great. Thanks very much.
You bet. All right, folks, we continue to find out what's going on with all these radio stations that are being bought up by left-wing billionaire George Soros and the state of talk radio as we know it. Lots going on. Michael Harrison's scheduled to be next. Don't go anywhere.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
George Soros, you may know of him. He is putting $415 million stake in Odyssey. It's one of the biggest radio companies in the United States. Now, Soros, obviously controversial for many reasons, but he is going to take a major stake in this company, $415 million. Now, he will not be the main owner of the company, but he will have a major influence. Now, this company, you may not have heard of them before, but they own lots of stations with hundreds of news departments in the United States.
That's a report from Dave Bondi on the ongoing efforts between George Soros and his investment fund buying debt that was acquired by Odyssey, right? And now his his companies acquired this debt, giving him this controlling stake in the debt and influence over what goes on in these radio stations. Now, that comes after purchasing, I forget how many, I think it was 7 Spanish-language conservative talk radio stations in South Florida and other areas last year. And it seems that there is quite a move to level the playing field between the left-wing activists like George Soros and the right-of-center conservative community that comments on the radio. So I wanted to talk about this a little bit, and I wanted to really get an overall sense of what's going on in the state of radio, talk radio as we know it today, from somebody who really understands this stuff. And that's Michael Harrison. He's the publisher of Talkers Magazine, who recently, thankfully, added me to their Heavy 100 list, and I'm honored to have received that honor. And I want to welcome Michael Harrison back to the show. Welcome back, sir.
It's great to be back with you, Rich, and congratulations to you. We have our own tracking systems, and you have had nothing but an upward trajectory in terms of influence and impact, not to mention ratings and number of affiliates in the time now that you've been on the air. It's no longer brand new. You're probably feeling quite seasoned and experienced, and probably have a nice relationship with all the millions of people listening to you. Congrats, you've done a great job, and I'm really glad to be back.
Oh, thank you, sir. That means a lot to me, and I really appreciate it. And I'm equally I'm happy to see the work that you guys are doing, not just with the Heavy 100 list, but moreover, probably one of the most true monikers that you see for a product, right? Your moniker is the Bible of talk radio. There isn't another industry publication that is solely serving talk radio, right? There's TV and radio, there's radio and sports radio and other things, but you guys really focus on talk and news talk, and I think that's so important for those of us that consume that, those that work in it. So kudos to you guys as well. And I know you have a big conference coming up, and I want to jump into that maybe in the next segment. But I'd like you to weigh in a little bit as a not a passive observer, right, but a really active observer of what goes on in radio as the publisher of Talkers Magazine. When you look at this, I think if I look at it objectively, I'd say, well, George Soros is a guy with money, and he's got his political views like I have mine and others have theirs. And, let's bring this to the marketplace of ideas and see who wins. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. How do you view this?
Well, I view it that it's just not that easy. It's just not that easy to come in with hundreds of millions of dollars, take over a chain of stations, and all of a sudden wield tremendous political influence in the marketplace of ideas. Radio is a very difficult business, and just digressing to the point you made that we are very focused on radio. Talkers will always be radio-centric, right down to the day there's the last radio station broadcasting.
Amen to that.
We believe in the word radio. We don't believe in the word audio. We are not ashamed of radio. We think radio is viable and valuable, and is evidenced by the fact that a company interested in making money, such as the Soros organization, it's a money-making organization. Soros is a businessman. His heir is already in place, and it's not some loose cannon out there wielding his power. He does it in many other ways. But through the radio business, I personally feel, based on my observations and my knowledge of this, that it's not about political influence. It's a matter of getting an opportunity to really have a large footprint in the bigger radio picture. A lot of these stations are music stations. A lot of these stations are sports stations. A lot of these stations are all news. You mentioned they have a news department, news departments in the plural. But it's not so easy to suddenly turn stations in a different direction, especially those that have audiences that expect a certain type of programming. So I am not alarmed that this is going to become a major political grab in terms of influence via the radio waves. I think that could always happen to one degree or another, but I don't think it's going to happen in this case. I think it's just almost coincidental that Soros, who's so known for supporting liberal causes, philosophy, candidates, DAs, I mean, it just goes on and on. I don't think it's going to work out this way, as a lot of people fear. Over time, that may change. But over time, the Soros organization might find that they want to get out of the radio business. The problem with the radio business today is too many people who are not experienced at radio have control of the wheel. And it's a very idiosyncratic business, very, very competitive and very difficult, particularly here in the digital age, in finding its footing. So I'm not going to be an alarmist and say, oh, it's a terrible thing, look at what they're doing and all that. Radio has enough problems as it is. And I think it's going to take a long time before any of this makes its way to actual impact on the air. That's my take on it.
And I think that's a fair take, and I appreciate your insight on it because you're somebody, again, with decades of experience on top of, my half dozen years in radio, and I appreciate it. And my initial look at this was, this guy is a multi-billionaire. When you're a multi-billionaire, you can afford to write off a few $100 million. And I don't think anybody wants to throw that money away, but I think you can afford it because you can, right? There's enough of a cushion. And in the case where they don't make the money that they want to make, they lose, they write off, and it's counted as losses. The other side of that coin for me was you buy it and you destroy it because it's against what you actually believe in, right? They're constantly criticizing you. They're criticizing your DAs. You take out a bunch of stations, and voila. I think you raise a very valid point, though, that they're not all news talk stations. They're not all conservative talk stations. They are, it's a mix of stations. Some are in Spanish, some are music, etc. So I guess we'll be fair and give it a wait-and-see approach. The larger point that I think you made, which is kind of outside of this topic, but something I want to delve into, is the state of radio overall. There's a funny joke that I heard, or a funny phrase that I heard coming into radio, and that was, radio's been dying since the television was invented, right? and the reality is that's probably true, but it's not, because here we are today, radio's still thriving. This is a well-established show, Larry King, the late great Jim Bohannon, Little Old Me, and yet the show, like you mentioned, continues to grow and add affiliates and have success. So I think radio's not going anywhere.
No, I don't think radio's going anywhere either, unless the people that own radio, as I mentioned before, a lot of bean counters, large corporate types, investors, venture capitalists, as opposed to radio operators who have, radio flowing in their veins.
Yeah.
Radio can shoot itself in the foot and has done a lot of that in the past decade or so, maybe 2 decades. But that aside, the statistics indicated, not just in the United States, but worldwide, radio is one of the most trusted mediums out there. Radio is vital in terms of the numbers. Millions of people, tens of millions of people in the United States listen to radio. AM radio is still big. There's the whole controversy about it being taken out of the dashboards by car manufacturers.
Yeah.
That's been set back by public and congressional disapproval. And radio is a lifeline. Radio, it's so easy, Rich, it's so easy to tear down the web. It's so easy for the internet to be knocked off. It's not that easy to knock off 10,000 transmitters independently broadcasting around the country to analog radios. And that's why radio really is a bulwark against tyranny and one of the last bastions of free speech. So I'm very optimistic about the future of radio, but not unrealistic. And is that it does face a tremendous amount of challenges, as do all media that comes out of the 20th century. Newspapers are having problems. Film, cinema. What are movies? What are theaters anymore? What is television anymore?
Yeah.
It's all. But radio is simple. Radio is accessible. And I just think that, you and I can go around and around with all different kinds of statistics. If you look at it honestly, radio is very, very viable. Back to Soros. Yeah, one of the things that people think, do you have to run?
We'll pause here. We'll come right back. Folks, we're on with Michael Harrison. and he's the publisher of Talkers Magazine. I'm having the time of my life, right, talking about radio. I'm a radio geek. I love this stuff. So we're going to continue that discussion, and if you guys want to chime in with a call or two, we'll do that again maybe in the segment following this upcoming segment. Also want to hear a little bit about the big conference that they're putting together, and of course I love the anecdotal stories from Michael Harrison's illustrious career, so we're going to get some of those as well. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, welcome back, America. We continue our conversation with the publisher of Talkers Magazine, the Talk Radio Bible. That's none other than Michael Harrison. Michael Harrison, there's so much that I always like to chat with you about because there's, you've done it all, right? From running stations to being on the air to being behind the scenes, right? I've only done this and been a producer. And so I always made fun of the suits and the guys that were PDs and whatnot. That was my job to
well, I've always done both. I've always been a suit and a sweatshirt.
I love that.
It depends
That's
on the
fantastic.
time of day. I'm left and right brained, and it's been a conflict throughout my very long career.
Now, I know you guys have been covering the industry news portion of this on how the House of Representatives and Congress is handling the protecting AM radios and on that debacle that we had last year. I know there was some updates that recently came out. Are you aware of any of those?
Yeah, I mean, the updates are complicated, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds for your listeners, other than they should know that Congress is trying to pass a bill that will protect AM radio in every vehicle. They're calling it the AM Radio for Every Vehicle Act. And I believe this week they're going to be taking a formal step in setting a committee and advance it to the floor. And a number of bipartisan members of the House and the Senate are very supportive of it. So it looks like it'll pass, and it should provide a little bit of protection in the onslaught of the automobile manufacturers, who eventually they're going to get their way. Eventually, it'll be all digital. But it doesn't have to happen now. I figured that they should leave AM radio in cars for at least another 5 to 10 years. And then after that, I think everything will be, basically a whole different kind of platform that'll make what exists now seem obsolete. I mean, we haven't reached the end of the evolution of media. If anything, we're at the beginning of a new era that's accelerating by the day. So when I talk about AM radio and the government protecting it, which is kind of weird, here we are, a bunch of quasi-conservatives saying we want government intervention.
Yeah, right.
And that's a whole complicated set of principles and legalese. But the fact is that AM radio in cars is it provides a service. If AM is thrown out of cars, so will FM be. We're really talking analog radio, and it's just premature. So I don't think it's going to happen very quickly. And if it does happen, radio will find a way. Radio will continue as long as the people that operate radio understand what radio is and don't turn it into some type of utilitarian set of services because it's audio. Radio has to be a magical blend of news, views, excitement, coverage live, magic, show business, entertainment, information, education. It's an art form that grew out of the 20th century, and it's as purposeful in terms of its service to communities as it is an art form and fun. Where do you find that all under one big top, one tent? And that's what makes radio special. If it's coming on an AM radio or an FM radio or shortwave radio, or it's coming out of your refrigerator, wherever it's being carried, is not as important as the aesthetic that it represents. And so my major platform right now when I talk to broadcasters is don't lose sight of what makes radio radio. It's like don't lose sight of what makes a news organization, whether you're putting it on print or it's on digital or it's on a television set or a radio. Don't lose, or a movie. Don't lose sight of what makes a movie a movie. It doesn't matter if it's in a theater or a home theater or on somebody's smartphone. It's still cinema. It's still a movie. Radio has got to stick to its guns and be radio. And I know you as a broadcaster understand what I'm saying. I hope the listeners do too, because the listeners are as much a part of this as we who are in the industry are.
Yeah, they're the biggest part. Folks, we're on with Michael Harrison, the publisher of Talkers Magazine, and they put on a major conference every year called Talkers. This is their 27th year. And Michael Harrison, I want you to stick with us and tell us all about the conference straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And last year, I attended the Talkers Conference. I had the opportunity to participate, as did the head honcho around here, Kevin Delaney. He was a great guy, by the way. Participated in some panel discussions, and we met a lot of interesting people. You got professionals from all over the radio industry. Michael Harrison, tell us more about it.
Well, it's an inside-the-industry phenomenon. It's been going on for 27 years, and it shows no signs of stopping. It used to be called the New Media Seminar, but I noticed everybody was calling it Talkers, which is the name of the magazine and basically the name of our organization. So we just start calling it Talkers, and it's a symposium. It's a meeting of the minds. It's people from all aspects of basically talk radio with its cousin cable news talk television people, and of course a tremendous podcasting element and discussion about the very things we've been talking about platforms and the changing environment. And there are people who are considered talent there. There are people who are managers. There's a bit of technology. And as I said, it's not political. People from the left, people from the right, coming under the common denominator of broadcasters as opposed to politicians. And it's a very productive thing. I'm not here to promote it because it's not open to the public. The only people that can attend are people who are in the business, and there's a lot of reasons for that. It's a serious. It's not show busy. It's not to entertain, and we are going to record every inch of it, and people will be able to see what's going on behind the scenes in the business within a few weeks after the event on June 7th in Long Island, and it'll be online to watch it. So there you go.
Outstanding. A good pitch if I've ever heard one. Michael Harrison, I want to thank you for being here, sir. You are a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot. Godspeed to you. See you soon.
Thank you so much, Rich.
You bet. All right, folks, the time-honored tradition of Open Phone America is coming up right after this. 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-482-5337. Don't go anywhere.
From the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to be with you for hour number 3 of our late-night national town hall conversation. 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez is the phone number if you want to join us. This is the time-honored tradition of Open Phone America, hour number 3. We do a recap of everything we talked about earlier. We add some new topics, and of course, we take lots of calls. I would dare venture to say I take more calls than any other talk radio host I know. And I love taking calls. I love speaking with you all, the listeners in different parts of the country, in some cases, different parts of the world. To me, it's a real treat. I can't think of too many people in other jobs, not even big TV hosts, right, that have big TV commentary shows. They don't get to talk to anybody. I mean, they might reach a big audience, but they're not having a back and forth dialogue or conversation like when Billy from Dallas calls and, yells at me because of my conservative positions on things. That's just the beauty of talk radio. And we've been talking about talk radio. We've been talking about how there's a move to change the landscape of talk radio. There's a lot going on in the news. There's a big Trump rally tomorrow. We'll talk about that if you want. If not, I'll give you my update on it tomorrow. And I want to get to your calls as well. Again, some headlines. I don't want to leave out the meat and potatoes of what we do. Nikki Haley has endorsed Trump for 2024. I don't know if that comes as a surprise to many of you. I wasn't sure how she was what angle she was taking here. But again, it's presidential politics, it's electoral politics, so I would imagine the Trump people would want that endorsement because, you're trying to win a race here, right? We're going up against Joe El Baboso Biden and all of his Democrat henchmen, so I think you need all the help you can get. And, of course, Haley is a little bit tongue-in-cheek with her endorsement, where she basically, I think she says, I hope that he tries to reach out to her former supporters. I thought it was really interesting. But let's see if we could do these. Let's play cut number 27.
Trump has not been perfect on these policies. I've made that clear many, many times. But Biden has been a catastrophe. So I will be voting for Trump.
Well, me too. I will also be voting for Trump. And if we can keep him up late at night while he's on the campaign trail and get him back on the show, I'll do an official endorsement on the air. But Nikki Haley went on. She continued. Listen to this.
Trump would be smart to reach out to the millions of people who voted for me and continue to support me and not assume that they're just going to be with him. And I genuinely hope he does that.
I don't know what that means. These millions of people comment. I don't know if she's trying to add a little bit of panache to her position, saying, hey, look, I just endorsed you and I just brought you millions of voters. I don't know if she's angling for a vice presidency or maybe getting an ambassadorship again. I have no idea what her angle here was. Maybe it was just truly the way she wanted to phrase that statement. But it seemed odd to me that, she would make this endorsement and then follow it up with, I really hope he reaches out to my millions of supporters. I really hope he does. It just seemed like, come on, lady, what's going on here? Say what you mean and mean what you say. Anyway, I want to get your thoughts on Nikki Haley. I want to get your thoughts on talk radio, on the Soros buyout of things, and everything else that we've got going on here. Let's see, where do we go? Where do we start? Let's go to... Let's see, what do we got here? Who started first? I'm going to go with, look who it is. It's Gil in Manila, Philippines. Right there, on hold the longest. Go ahead, Gil in Manila.
Yes, good evening. It's lunchtime here, and I'm actually sitting in Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, look at you. Buenas tardes and buen provecho.
Muchísimas gracias. If you recall, I used American Talk Radio to get myself sprung out of a Mexican prison where I spent 8 months. And I was on talk radio all over the United States. Now, when I first got thrown in the jug, I have my two oldest children at that time. One was a freshman in college, one was a junior, and they said, "Well, we gotta do a cause celeb. We gotta get on TV." I said, "We can't get on TV. We don't have any video." But once I get our situation written up in a major newspaper, I can be on talk radio somewhere every day. And I was. And in El Paso, where I was living at the time, I had a 15 to 1.5 hour segment on a local talk show there every day. And we used it to put pressure on the Mexican government. The talk show host there, who is no longer with us, his name was Paul Strelson. He made a statement one day that if I was not let out, he was going to go to talk radio hosts all over the United States and ask for a tourist boycott of Mexico. Hit him where it hurts, in the pocketbook. And shortly after that, I found myself a free, exonerated man.
Wow. That's the power of talk radio. Gil, you got to stay away from those Mexican prisons. If I told you once, I've told you 1,000 times. Listen, I think that's an amazing story, and I'm so glad that it worked. I've seen talk radio be very powerful in so many ways, and I'm not surprised in the least at the story that you just told. I'm glad you're not in jail. I'm glad you sound terrific. You sound healthy and in good spirits. It's good to hear your voice, Gil, and Godspeed to you, my friend. Let me see. Where do we go now? We continue. Let us go to Wilmington, Delaware, and check in with Doc on WDEL. Doc, go right ahead.
A couple of comments, a couple of thoughts, and then I'll get off the air and let the rest of your listeners chime in. Nikki Haley. I think she's a great voice in the Republican Party, but I hope that she does not be a divisive force in the Republican Party. If she wants to throw her hat behind President Trump, more power to her. I'm with her all the way because I'm with President Trump all the way. That's my take on Nikki Haley. If she's angry for something, so be it. Second point, I'm going to make a couple controversial statements here. I hope you don't cut me off or cut me off the show for forever. This is about George Soros. If George Soros were a Gentile, he would be on the run in South America as a Nazi war criminal. Here's why.
Wasn't that his dad that was the Nazi person?
If George Soros were a Gentile, okay, not a Jew, he would be on the run and not in South America as a Nazi war criminal. Here's why. In an interview with 60 Minutes, Leslie Stahl, which I have in my files, years ago, 60 Minutes, Leslie Stahl in the 80s, I believe, 40-some years ago, George Soros admitted to selling his own Jewish people down the river to the Nazis for money. His statement, somebody had to do it. Okay? This is for real. Can't make this stuff up, as they say. And George Soros is a scumbag. He broke the British pound. His previous incarnation was as the advisor of the Queen Elizabeth and the royal family on their fortune. His brother, by the way, is the founder of a group none other than Greenpeace. So I think somebody should really investigate the Soroses in this country, and if need be, strip the guy of his citizenship and throw him the heck out of the country.
Well, tell us how you really feel, Doc. Listen, I don't know whether him being a Jew got him any free pass. I know that his father was Nazi affiliated, and I've never really met a Jew ever that was like, oh, that's Soros, we love him, what a mensch. Never heard it, right? And I have lots of friends in the Jewish community. So I don't know if that's true. I think Soros gets a pass because of his elite connections and because the guy's got a fortune and he's able to buy his way through influence into a lot of different arenas. I'm with you. I don't think he's a stand-up guy. I think he's responsible in many ways for the injury, if not death, of many police officers and others that have allowed criminals to run, I'm going to call it free, right, with no cash bail. These pro-crime, progressive prosecutors that coddle criminals are all funded by Soros and groups that his fund manages and donates to. And this is what the guy believes in. And now he's coming after talk radio, and I'll accept anybody's opinion on why he's coming after talk radio, but it's going to be difficult for me to change my mind that if I were I don't know how old he is, 80-something years old, 86 or something like that. If I were, staring death in the face, right? At 86, how far away are you from death? You're pretty darn close. Even if you've got another 10 years left, that's close enough. And if I were looking at death in the face and had multi-billions of dollars available to me, and I had the opportunity to, buy CNN, buy MSNBC, or hurt them in some way, I think I'd be doing a public service, right? I'd buy these companies and I'd let them falter because you know what? I don't have much life to live anyway. Now, I wouldn't do that because I'm afraid of what they say. I would do it because I don't believe in what they do, and I don't think they're worthwhile, and I also don't think they're profitable. It's the big deal with liberals in talk radio has always been they don't know how to make money. People don't buy the products. People don't listen to the shows. People aren't really attracted to the personalities they bring in. I listened to Robert F. Kennedy on the radio for a long time, and I didn't agree with anything he said ever. I never heard him talk about about any vaccines until years later. And to me, he was just interesting that wow, people really think like that. That's crazy. So I don't disagree with you on a ton there. I think George Soros is like Trump would say, a bad hombre. But Soros is 93 years old. Thank you for the update from the control room. So, 93 years old. Yeah, listen, you tell me if I could spend $400 million and with a chance to take out, a good amount of talk radio stations, why not, right? I think I would do it if I were his age, too. The question, it's not about profitability. I don't think it's going to be about profitability because obviously they're in bankruptcy. They're not profitable now. So you can work on that, right? I've seen other radio companies go into bankruptcy and come out of them and become profitable. You can be if you manage things right and manage your assets right. And it's a business. But you have to manage it as a business. And I don't know that Soros is going to do that. He's in a different kind of business where you've got money, you raise money, and you influence things. And I think in that type of business, it's not about making money. It's about making an impact. Anyway, Doc, thanks for the call. I appreciate your insight on that. Folks, we get to the rest of your calls and more right now. Straight ahead. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, we continue with our conversation with you all, the American people. And we've got calls from all over Idaho, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Oregon, West Coast in the building, New Mexico as well, Chicago. I'm looking forward to it. Where's New York at? All right, WFAS, where are you at? Why is everybody so quiet there tonight? Plus, we got some good friends in California. I'm waiting on you guys, too. Anyway, let us continue the conversation here. Let us go here. Let's see who was next on this list. I want to go to Sue, Schwenksville, Pennsylvania, WXDE. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich. Well, I'm kind of following up with your last guest. Some of the things that he said was really speaking to me there. He didn't seem to be too worried about George Soros, but, it's a slippery slope. As a population, we've lost a lot of things that we weren't tracked on. When I was a kid, you had television that was free. There was one phone in the house, whatever. And now, you see all the local newspapers have been bought up by conglomerates. They put their own content in there.
Yep.
And, maybe he's just got a little foot in the door, but it's coming. And the other thing is that your guest said about how everything's going to be digital in the future. I'm listening to you on my phone right now, so that means I'm on an app. That means somebody can track what I'm doing, that I'm listening to you, where I am, and the duration that I'm listening. If I listen to you on the regular radio, nobody knows. And so I do.
Well, unless you're one of the people participating in the Nielsen ratings, then they do know, right? Because they track that stuff.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that, either you're going to have to pay for it once everything's digital, or you're going to, at the very least, have to log in. When Odyssey went online, well, now they require you to have a login. Well, I refuse to do that. So I don't listen on that particular app anymore because I just don't like the idea of all the surveillance of us as a population. I don't know. I mean,
I'm with you.
I'm not a tinfoil hat wearer, but I'm concerned about it, and I'm concerned about the whole George Soros thing because he may not be much of a presence now, but just wait. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, and again, I don't know anything definitively, right, Sue? I'm with you. I also, there's a lot of things I don't like to be tracked on. Like I just got an Alexa, I don't know, a year ago, and I have it in the room I spend the least amount of time in, and I literally barely use it. And almost every time I use it, I go, I think I'm unplugging this and throwing it away because I'm just obsessed with this idea that, they're going to turn it on me, and they could, the fact that it's always listening for you to say, Alexa, what's the weather? Or Alexa, set alarm for it, whatever. And it's useful for that. But I'm with you. I don't like any of the tracking stuff. I don't like it. But I've given a little bit with that one device. And thus far, I think I'm safe, right? But on the other side of things, the Soros thing, I think that remains to be seen. I don't know the answer to what's going on there. I don't know that I think Michael Harrison gave a very astute opinion. I really do. I think he gave the opinion of somebody who's a radio professional, right? Michael Harrison's run radio stations, and he's thinking nobody gets into this business to lose money. Unless you're George Soros, right? I think George Soros might be the guy that gets into this willing to lose money, A, because he's 93 years old, B, because he's got tons of money, and he may just want to slow down some of those stations and impact the reach in an election year. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe he turns around and says, look, I can't stand a word of what these people say, but I want to hear more of it because it sells more products and it makes us more money. Maybe. I feel like he's too much of an ideologue for that. And that's my personal opinion on it. So I think that there's probably going to be a slow fade or phase out of the conservative talk stations, or if anything else, like we're on an Odyssey affiliate in one of the stations that we're on, and I've had callers tell me that other than this show, that all the other shows have already changed. And that's a scary idea to me. So, Sue, thanks for your call. I appreciate it. Big shout out to you and everybody listening on WXDE. And rest assured, America, as long as they let me speak on the radio, I will keep it real. I'm not lying to you. I'm telling you the truth. And we're coming back with your calls and more. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
But look at this number for Donald Trump, 22%. Where was Donald Trump at this point 4 years ago in the polls? He was just at 9% of the vote. So he's seen more than a doubling in his support among African Americans. This margin, which was in the 70s just 4 years ago, look at where it is now, 69 minus 22. That puts it in the 40s. My goodness gracious, if this held through the general election, obviously we're still months away, this would be by far the best performance for a Republican candidate among black voters in a generation, 2 generations, probably since 1960 and Richard Nixon against John F. Kennedy. That's how long we're really talking about when we're looking at this margin here. This could be a truly historic margin. It's quite a troubling sign for the Biden campaign.
And that is Harry Enton from CNN. He's the senior data analyst at CNN, and he's shocked that Trump has more than doubled his support with minority voters, in particular in the black community here that they're talking about. And it comes to me as no surprise that Trump is putting this rally together in New York, in the South Bronx. This is something they talked about a while back. You might recall several months ago, we had Trump pollster John McLaughlin on the program, and he mentioned that this is something that they'd been thinking of. Now, John McLaughlin's from the Bronx, so I thought it was just really interesting because this is the campaign being very ambitious, saying things like, we can take the Bronx. We can win Staten Island and the Bronx. We can win, they think they can take New Jersey. They think they could take New York. I think they can do it too. I've never seen these blue areas in play. And these are the bluest areas in the country besides California that I've ever seen. And it's remarkable to me to see this happening. And I think obviously it has to do with Biden's horrible presidency. But the rest of it has to do with people aren't blind. And when people see this tremendous injustice, all they can think of is this is unfair. And fact number 3, people don't want to do poorly. People want to do well, right? When Trump said, are you tired of winning yet? People want that life. Everybody wants a life where instead of saying, hey, look, we're taking the kids on a long weekend trip, from Thursday to Monday or from Friday to Tuesday to Universal or to Orlando to Disney or something like that. They'd rather do 10 days in Milan, right? I think everybody wants to do a nice trip overseas and enjoy life. Go to Aruba for 10 days. Let's rock out. But too many people have had to curtail their vacation plans. And if you're listening to this and you're like, man, I haven't been on a vacation in years. I'd love to go to Florida for 5 days. That's exactly my point. That's exactly the point I'm making. The fact that you can't and you don't have the option and you're doing the staycation and maybe you're going to the beach or maybe last year you went to the beach and you can't go to the beach this year because you can't afford the gas anymore because, Trump was $2 a gallon and Biden's approaching $4. Whatever the case is, things were better. I mean, I'm looking at this article. I just saw it here seconds ago. Hopefully I could find it. Look at this. Fast food costs are up so high. Listen to this. The chicken sandwich at McDonald's, the McChicken, is up 199%. The Frosty is up 111%. The Taco Bell burrito is up 132%. Now, I don't know too many rich people that eat at these places other than Trump, right, who's a big fan of McDonald's. But I know lots of poor people who rely on fast food to feed themselves and to feed their family. And all I can tell you is when you're looking at increased costs that are that high, 200% or 199%, 111%, 132%, this is breaking the bank. My daughter went to McDonald's the other day or to Wendy's, and she came back and she was like, she spent something like $20 just on food for her. And she doesn't make $20 an hour. She's 18 years old. She works in a movie theater, right? This was a big shock to her. And she's been working since she was 16 when she was able to go and afford things prior to that. So anyway, just a quick point on the economy and why I think Trump is doing well with minority voters. Let's go to Wayne, Bonners Ferry, Idaho, KBFI. Wayne, go right ahead.
Good evening, Rich. It's a pleasure to speak with you as always. And I would like to say one thing. I'm at the backstop of Canada, right up here in the northern part of Idaho. And as you come into my town, there's a big sign. It says, God, guns, and Trump. This is red as it gets. And, a lot of people don't even have television up here. And these are farmers. They get up at the crack of dawn, and they're working till the sun goes down. They're in there in their barns, milking the cows, hooking them up to the machines, washing out their udders, and this never stops year-round. This is where our food comes from. They're out in the fields, and they depend upon the price of gas, the price of diesel. All this affects them in a very dramatic way. And I predict that Trump is just going to steamroll through the Bronx, and you're going to witness this. And there are going to be more African Americans that are going to be rallying behind Trump in your area than you can possibly imagine. And it's because there's an uprising happening here, and you can feel it all around us. We're also very afraid that we know he's going to win this election, but then we're also afraid there could be some type of little accident that happens, like happened to Joe Kennedy, that happened to John Kennedy, that happened to Bobby Kennedy, and the assassination attempts that happened on Ronald Reagan. And these I don't think anybody in this area think were true accidents. And, it just seems very suspicious as we put it down on paper. We're very skeptical about how this is all going to play out.
Well, Wayne, I can appreciate that. And I have some brothers that I constantly, I chat with. And my brothers are always concerned about this. And all I can ever tell them is, look, I worked for a little while in the government. And what I learned was that they always want to look you right in the eye, and they never want to get their hands dirty. Ever. They will do the dirtiest things while looking you in the eye and having someone else do their dirt. That's a key part of how the swamp works. And I think those things worked in the past. Not saying anything's outside of the realm of possibility. Trump and his security team should always be, ever vigilant. But I will say too many people, or in my opinion, too many people are watching right now. Too many people are, when you have the Bronx in play, right? The fact that a Trump rally, there's no small Trump rally, right? He just did one in New Jersey at the beach in Wildwood, and they expected, 25,000 people. It ended up being 100,000 people. When you have that kind of political movement, that's massive. And it's very, very difficult for the bureaucrat type, for the deep stater type, to put something like that together, because you really just don't know anymore. You don't know who is the next person that's putting on their red MAGA hat over the weekend, right? The circle of trust for the swamp is getting smaller and smaller, while I think the people that are saying, you know what, I'm giving this guy a chance. I saw a funny meme on Instagram a couple of nights ago, and it said, it was like the insurance commercial with the little gecko, and it said, save 15% on everything, switch back to Trump. I thought that was pretty funny. So I think that's a reality for so many Americans, where people just don't want to see that happen. And thankfully, we're not in the 80s. We're not in the 60s. We're not in the 1800s like the way they did Lincoln. So I believe that Trump is safer somewhat. My hope and prayers are with him, of course, for safety and security. I don't want to see anything like that happen. But I just really believe that this is, like Trump's been saying, this is too big to rig. It just is. There are too many people watching, too many people that are hip to this, too many people that are not living in fear right now because of COVID-19, that are, if you don't put on a mask, you're going to kill grandma. If you show up to vote, you're going to kill someone, right? That's not happening right now. In fact, people are angry that, their little kids are behind in school because of COVID, because of the lockdowns. People are upset that their paychecks, the people that did get a raise, they're thinking, man, I'm making extra money now, and I still can't live life well the way I want to because everything's so expensive. People that got a 2% mortgage under Trump and refied their home or bought their home for the first time and have these wonderful 1.5% mortgages, 2.5% mortgages, guess what? They're screwed. They can't go anywhere if they want to sell their house that may have dramatically gone up in value. Too bad. You sell it, where do you go? You end up paying 7-8%. So I think most people are not selling. Most people are upset. They've lost their upward mobility. That's a sense of liberty being lost. And when it gets that bad that you see fast food, more than doubling, 199% increase on a McChicken. I think you're right. Trump is going to steamroll the Bronx. Wayne in Bonners Ferry, Idaho, thank you very much for your call. Excellent analysis, excellent commentary. Feel free to call anytime. And a big shout out to everybody in KBFI country, which is bordering Canada. Godspeed. All right, folks, we're coming right back. The rest of your calls and more. Don't move a muscle.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Voted best head of hair in live late night radio 6 years in a row. It's Rich Valdez.
The president has the authority to do something about this unilaterally. Congress is in a divided government right now. Why isn't he doing anything?
Why should he have to do it unilaterally? Why should we do it in a legislative way? And let's not forget that negotiated
action before to undo some of.
Wait, so you're right. He took many executive actions before, but in order to deal with what's happening at the border, in order to deal with a broken immigration system, you need law.
That is Karine Jean-Pierre, again, blaming the border crisis on law, on a lack of this, a lack of that, not a lack of enforcement, not a lack of competence or a lack of integrity. No, it's always somebody else's fault. KJP sticking up for her boss like a good press secretary, but like a bad American. Unbelievable. Anyway, we continue with the border crisis out of control. We heard that report earlier. There was another part of that report where Bill Melugin from Fox News, after interviewing everybody coming across the border and them saying that they come from India and Pakistan and Turkey and Iran, there's another part of it where he talks with someone who's in the area collecting the IDs that they throw away. Listen to this.
We met up with a local resident out here, Corey Gautreaux. He's former U.S. military. He goes out and he collects all of these discarded passports and ID cards from these illegal immigrants from all around the world as they cross here in the Jacumba area. He's got an entire room full of them. You'll see passports, IDs from China, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, many others. You'll notice many of them are burned or shredded or destroyed in some way as these illegal aliens try to destroy some of these documents as soon as they arrive here in the United States, trying to hide who they are and where they've been. And Gautreaux says that is a security concern.
They're just dropping this stuff on the ground to come here and assume a new identity. So that's a little bit scary with my military background and seeing the people that are coming across that male, these are all military age males. People keep saying that. I've got the proof right here.
Well, he's got the proof right there. He's pointing to all of these passports and IDs that are somewhat mutilated or burnt or destroyed and that have been discarded as they get to the border because they don't want people to know their name or where they're really coming from. I would presume is the answer to that, because why on earth would you want to toss your ID? Anyway, that's what's going on at the border. Let's go to the calls. Tom in La Crosse, Wisconsin, WIZM. Tom, go right ahead.
Yeah, hi, Rich. I'm a 75-year-old man, former combat military and career veteran.
Thank you for your service.
I have to speak slow to think what I need to say because I know the alphabet agencies listen to this stuff at night. Silent Wind or the Prism, NSA uses all that stuff. I've worked for federal government in sensitive stuff, and then whatever. And I've been a public servant, and I've been involved in politics, national, local.
And what are your thoughts on the border?
What's that?
What are your thoughts on the border, Tom?
My thoughts on the border, I hope I'm not trying to sensationalize anything. And I have to be vague of what I say, but the thing is on the border, you know, we consider all the things that are being given to these young men coming over and so forth, our tax dollar provides them, and Biden is flying them all over the country now by commercial jets. That a lot of them are landing in conservative areas around the country. And, Biden, the only thing he cares about is his damn election. He wants a job because he's never done a real man's work in his life. So what I think his agenda may also include is getting these illegals into red states and even blue states. But
for the purpose of voting, you're thinking? I probably agree with that. And for anything else, the apportionment process, right, where if the census can count these people and they can say, look, we got all these people here. We have more people here, so we need more congressional representation. Therefore, we have to add more Congress people, and that solidifies power yet another way, especially if they're going to lean one way versus another way. If they're going to say, yeah, no, I came here under Biden, and Biden, you got to vote for so-and-so because I got hairy legs. And there you go. And I think that is part of the grand scheme of things, ultimately, to solidify power when they realize our agenda is not popular with the people, but ultimately we can politicize our power, get more people, get these votes, and continue to have the influence and the power that we have. So I think you're on to something, Paul. Again, thank you for your service. I appreciate you. Feel free to call anytime. Folks, we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, to the phones we go. Let's go to Chicago. WGN. Diane, what do you think Nikki Haley is making these comments for? Go right ahead.
Okay, well, I think she would, and hi, Rich.
Hi.
I think she's making that comment to stay in the spotlight. I think she really enjoyed being in the political spotlight. Not that that's a bad human, makes her a bad human being, but I don't think he should pick her as vice president. And also her comments were because of, our allies, et cetera, et cetera. So that just goes to the issue again of that. I hate to keep saying deep state, but the idea that the
no, I get it. The deep state, 100%. It's a real thing. It definitely exists. And you're right. I think she likes the spotlight. She likes raising money. She likes having political power. That's what politics is all about. And she's trying to position herself in the best way possible. Thanks, Diane. I appreciate the call. Always appreciate you listening to the show as well. Let's see. Who else do we got here? Michael, Pendleton, Oregon. Very quickly, what is going on in Oregon?
Hey, my friend. Great talking to you, Rich. I wanted to say I give you so much credit for standing up for your beliefs, also for Billy Cunningham.
Great American Bill Cunningham. Michael, I don't want to cut you off, but I love Bill Cunningham, WLIW. He's one of the best out there. And I always appreciate your calls as well. I want to squeeze in one more because I think someone has a disagreement with us. Bruce in Ambridge, Pennsylvania, with seconds to go. What do you think about the Trump rally?
Okay, all over the internet. All those numbers you put out there are all false. Second
Which
thing
ones?
is...
No, let's stick with the first thing. What did you say? What's false?
Okay, Fox News questions Donald Trump's rally size. We've got
Which rally? Which rally? Every rally? You got to come better prepared for this, Bruce. You call, you lie, and you look silly in front of a lot of people. Come better prepared next time, and I'll beat you up a little bit better. All right, folks, hasta la próxima. Godspeed until tomorrow. I'm Rich Valdez.